Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
All right, Duke fans, welcome to the latest edition of DBR Bites. Not a long episode here, but we're going to have a longer one coming up soon, because one of the things we're going to talk about on this episode is something that's going to produce some really interesting content. At least that is my hope. This is my idea, and I hope it works. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but first, I am Jason Evans, joining you, as always, from the home office here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am joined by my buddy Donald Wine. Donald, 6 o'clock on a Thursday evening. Been a pretty quiet week for Duke news. What are you thinking, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm going up to Connecticut this weekend for the U.S. national team. The men's national team are playing, and it's a nice chance for me to get back into my other world because there hasn't been a lot going on around here. But I guess on the I guess in the internets, there's been a lot of Scheyer talk. So maybe we should talk about it.
There has been a lot of talk. Jon Scheyer has done a series of podcasts this week. I want to go on the record, by the way, and let everyone know. I have reached out to Duke, the sports information director, and said, hey, how about putting him on the DBR podcast? I don't want to brag or anything, but we're bigger than these other folks. We have a lot more listeners. We've been around a lot longer. We're a lot more consistent about having episodes every week. You know, hey, how about us? And we'll see what happens. I've requested a whole bunch of people from the Duke Sports Information Department. I don't know, Donald, why are we being shunned?
I mean, I would just say it's I would like to have him on the show, just like we would love to have anybody affiliated with the program on the show, and we await their call. Maybe they'll call, but we remain hopeful that we'll get somebody in the next couple of weeks.
Exactly. The most interesting of the interviews, in my opinion, was the one that he did with J-Rob, with one of his assistant coaches, Justin Robinson, on the Brotherhood podcast. And Donald, I just found it fascinating. There were just a number of things that I heard Scheyer talk about that I thought were unusual insight into the program. I mean, one of the most fascinating things was he basically said, Duke's not doing what everybody else is doing when it comes to the portal. They are not looking for guys who've been at multiple different schools. You know, there are all these guys out there who end up at 3, 4, sometimes even 5 different schools if they have enough eligibility. He said he likes the mental toughness of guys who figure out how to make it work, no matter how hard the circumstances may be. And it made me think, when you look back on the guys that Duke has taken from the transfer portal, other than Malik Brown, I think every one of them were guys who sort of played out their eligibility, or at least played for 4 years, I should say. at this school. Ryan Young, Theo John, obviously Sion James, and Mason Gillis. For the most part, I mean, Duke is not for the most part. Duke is absolutely not participating in this free for all of guys who go to 2 or 3 different schools.
I will say it's not necessarily the 2 or 3 different schools, but we have had guys who've had multiple years of eligibility when we got them, right? Like Ryan Young had 2 years, and I think at the time when we got him, we thought it was 1. It turned out to be 2, and
Right.
look how great those 2 years turned out to be, right? And Neil Begovic obviously didn't play as much, but was a 2-year guy. Cam Sheffield, 2-year guy.
Yeah.
Ofechukwu, I think, has does he have 2 years left? I might be mistaken on that. But there's a couple of guys
No,
that
I
they kind of
think
go
you're
after.
right. He does. But I think guys who are doing their first what Scheyer is basically saying is we're interested in guys who are doing their first transfer. We're not interested in guys who bounce around willy-nilly.
Right. So the funny thing is he actually mentioned this in the podcast. He said a couple of quotes that he had. One, he said, I think everyone should agree with this. Our goal is to have the most connected, toughest group every year. That right there, just you can see that in the guys he's recruiting. I think also, Jason, when you talk about guys who have bounced around a little bit, and this is not to really go down on people who do that, but in terms of Duke, it is harder to get into Duke if you're a regular student that has bounced from school to school.
Yes.
So there is that element that we have to sort of consider here, is actually getting into the school. And Duke, yes, Duke kind of, wants a well-rounded student, but they don't need students seeing the entire country before they come to Duke. The second thing, Jason, that plays into this is that when he's going after players, he said, quote, because he asked like, oh, what's your deal with the one and dones? And they were asking about that. And he goes, quote, everyone's a one and done player, so we have to coach with the same urgency. Even guys like Tyrese Proctor, they kind of go on year by year. So even the guys that end up staying, if you think about it, now it's a recruitment process for them after the season's over to say, would you like to stay for a year? Would you like to not go to the draft for a year, right? You had to kind of re-recruit guys like Isaiah Evans and Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster and Malik Brown to stay. So you have that element now. So the way that he's approaching it is something that I mean, that was the most rawest part of this, is that he's approaching this with the mentality of, yeah, if it's a one and done era, then we need to coach like it's a one and done era. We need to put everything into this team because we will not have this team after this year. And we're going to have to recruiting. He basically said there's a 50-day window. And the 50-day window was from the season ending to when Wilkins were committed. That was 50 days. And they kind of said, we need to do everything we need to do to recruit in those 50 days, because after that, we're down to, the transfer portal is basically thin, and we're not going to end up getting the players that we want and need to construct the roster that we want to have.
Yeah, I thought that part was fascinating. Look, he used the phrase that stuck out to me was, he said, he talked about the challenge of being a stable program in an unstable era, in an unstable environment. And he said that we have no idea what the recruiting rules will be like next year. We have no idea what the transfer portal rules will be like next year. There was very much a living in the moment kind of thing that you got from Jon Scheyer.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. And he also said, and I thought this was pretty surprising, throughout this season, we as Duke fans are constantly like, that guy feels like he's one and done. That guy feels like he's probably coming back. Scheyer basically said they had no idea. And they don't try to figure it out during the season. It was like you said, the 50 days between the season ends and Sebastian Wilkins. He's like, during those 50 days, we're like, I wonder who we're going to get. I wonder who we're going to have back. I mean, he all but implied that he had only a vague notion of who was leaving and who, I guess he knew who was leaving, I think, but only a vague notion of who might even come back when the season ended. I found that shocking.
And Jason, this is what I've always said about the one and done era. And a lot of people have come back at me and said, this is wrong. This is a very wrong way to approach it. But I stand on business when I say this. You are never a one and done player until you actually leave after 1 year. End of story, right? That is, you have to, if you stay 2 years, you cannot be a one and done player. That's just how that works. And so people put them into this bubble or put them on this pedestal of that guy's going to be gone after a year. And sure enough, we've had guys who have left after 1 year to go somewhere else. Are they one and done players? Maybe to Duke. But I think I think the year before this past year, right? The 2022-23 team where we saw I guess I'm sorry, 23-24 team, his second year where we saw so many guys transfer out or go to the draft and it felt like he had to recreate this team. I think that is where he understood as a young coach, hey, if these guys are thinking in 1 year installments, we have to coach in 1 year installments. And because of that, we got the coaching job that he did this year, where as a couple of pods that he was on mentioned, hey, here is your ACC coach of the year. Doesn't matter what the ACC actually put. Here is your national coach of the year. Doesn't matter what they said, right? He coached his ass off this year because of the fact he understood and the coaching staff bought into the notion of these guys are going to be here 1 year. Let's make this as great a year as possible. Let's prepare them as best as we can. And then once this year's over, then we can start the process of trying to re-recruit them to run it back next year.
You know, the other thing I wanted to mention, you said the word connectivity. I heard certain catchphrases, coach speak, so to speak, from Jon Scheyer throughout this, mental toughness. He said you have to earn, you have to prove so many times. And it's important, I think, for his players to know those things and to be aware of them. But like I said, connectivity, that was the thing that stuck with me the most when he talked about it, because he said he wants the team to play with pace and with randomness. And I was like, wait, what? And what he meant by that was, you're not on offense, we're not following patterns. On defense, we're not sticking to prescribed things. It's about improvising in the moment, being connected to your teammates, understanding what they're thinking you're going to do, understanding what you think they're going to do, knowing where everyone is in any given moment. He stressed that that's what it is about for Duke. And I think it'd be easy to sort of think that means, oh, he's just rolling the ball out there and letting them play. That is not the case. This is having that kind of connectivity, the kind of connectivity we saw from this year's team. And Jon Scheyer, by the way, mentioned, he said, we learned so much as a staff about what we want to be from this past season, and they want to replicate that. I don't know that up until this year, we saw what Jon Scheyer's ideal of a team is, but this year we saw it, and he is going to try to keep on replicating that. It is a team that has tremendous positional size, and it is a team that is mentally connected to each other, with lots of guys that can create opportunities, lots of guys that know how to help each other on defense. All the things that we saw that turned that Duke team into they didn't win the title, but one of the best teams that we've seen in college basketball in the past 25 years, arguably perhaps the best. That's what Jon Scheyer wants to replicate. And if you look at the current roster, the one for next year, boy, you see a lot of signs that he has managed to at least come close to replicating it.
So I have one more major note and a couple of tidbits that I heard from some of these pods that I think were fun to do, because John had some questions that were some fun questions. So we'll get to that in a second. You mentioned the connectivity of the team and how connected the staff is with the players and vice versa. He mentioned, he shouted out the sports science team at Duke with Nick Potter.
Yeah.
And he said that every day they get a readiness score, and it's about how ready is this player to be at their peak performance. And so they tailor their practices.
I love this part. Yes, I'm so
based
glad you're
on
bringing
that information. Yeah, based on that information, he'll go, okay, Jason's amped up. He's ready to go. We need to taper him back in the practice tomorrow because he's too jacked up, and we need him to be at this level on Thursday, all right? Next Thursday when the game happens. Donald is coming back from a slight back injury. Okay, let's ease him back, and then on Saturday we're going to ramp up his activity so that he can be at peak position. So they basically tweak their practices individually and collectively so that the team is ready on game days to give their peak performance. I thought that was fascinating, and again, a great use of the information that is at his disposal. He has assembled as great a staff with the analytics, with the medical, with the data, with the Coach Will and his staff. They have been so instrumental in keeping this team ready to see. And this is why we saw all those blowouts last year, because that team was ready to go every single time. Okay, now the couple of tidbits that I thought was very interesting. One, he talked about the staff wanting to compliment each other, and I thought that was great. He talked about, Brad's coming in and Tyler Thornton and how they complement some of the things that other guys on the staff do. He's doing roster construction with the staff as much as he is the team, which I think is great. A thing that he said that after practice, when he was an assistant coach, they used to do pickup games to 100 after the practice, and he would participate in those. This man is crazy. Also, Jason, he talked about some of his favorite shoes.
Going back to that about him being crazy. I loved when he was asked if he was who's the best shooter, not among the coaches, but like among everybody.
Everybody.
And he was like, "It's me." But then he goes, "Me and Isaiah have some business." I get a feeling from what he said that Isaiah may have beaten him. Isaiah Evans may have beaten Jon Scheyer in a shooting contest last year. Jon Scheyer's having none of this.
Jon Scheyer said, "You cannot go
coming.
You can't go pro until I beat you again." That's how that works.
Exactly.
Hey, thank you, Slim, for doing what you did in a shooting drill last year, because that's the reason you're back at Duke University, because you can't have to have a rubber match of some sort. He mentioned again the practices to 100. He also said his favorite shoes to wear and normally are Air Forces. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you know, you know. If you see Jon Scheyer walk out onto the bench in some black Air Force Ones, I don't know. I'm not asking you to make bets or wagers, but Duke by 1,000 in that game, because if he walks out in the black Air Forces, that means somebody is about to get beat down. That's how that works. And then finally, on the Crazy Cast, he had a couple of nuggets that I thought were interesting, Jason. One, he said that one of our exhibition games, he said one is finalized and he's working on another. That exhibition game will be on the road. So
true road game, yeah.
A true road game in exhibition so that we can get that experience. And then the final thing, which has been on the internet, if you're a UConn fan, you think that Duke is ducking UConn. If you're a Duke fan, you're probably thinking Hurley's ducking Jon Scheyer. He was asked point blank if he's trying to schedule something, and he said, obviously not for this regular non-conference schedule. He's like, we already got a loaded schedule, but he said, quote, "I'm sure that we're going to play sometime soon." My best friend Jeff has already said, okay, that exhibition game, we're going on the road to UConn. That sounds like something that we would do. So just, I'm not saying that's something that's happening, but it was interesting to note.
Yes, definitely. Hey, there's one other thing before we take a quick break here and get to sort of the exciting listener participation portion of the back half of this podcast. I wanted to note something. One of the biggest stories in college basketball over the past few days, lead story on the Field of 68's newsletter, lead story on the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, was the fact that it has been, I guess you'd say, confirmed as much as it possibly could be. Everyone says this sounds accurate. North Carolina's budget, the amount that UNC is paying for players for next year's team, is $14 million of pay for play NIL. That is a big old number, Donald. By all accounts, about triple. Carolina was in the $5 million range, so I've heard, so it has been reported. Last year, they're up to $14 million this year. And the follow-on comment that everyone has had upon hearing that UNC is spending about $14 million, which, by the way, puts them in the same general vicinity as teams like Kentucky, Indiana, Texas Tech, I think, is another one, who are really spending a tremendous amount of money. Kansas makes them probably one of the top 5 most expensive rosters in all of college basketball. The comment everyone has had is, okay, great. Hey, good for you, UNC, that you have found, because they're spending a ton on football. Bill Belichick. Great that you have also found a ton of money to spend on basketball to give you one of the top 5 budgets in all of college basketball. But what did you buy for that? Because people look at the UNC roster and they go, yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like top 25, top 30, maybe not top 15, certainly not top 10. So then the big question becomes like, what did you do that you spent this much money? And really, I mean, did they get, other than maybe Caleb Wilson, the freshman? Is there anybody on this team that looks like an all ACC player? Probably not. And I think it puts a tremendous amount of pressure, by the way, on Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis is already going to be under pressure. Over the past several years, UNC has not done what UNC is supposed to do. And for Hubert Davis now to have resources, the likes of which very few other teams in college basketball have, one of the top 5 budgets in the sport, he's got to produce. They've got to be 1 or 2 in the ACC. They got to be like a 1, 2, 3 seed, maybe 4 seed. They got to make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Otherwise, those boosters, folks that money's coming from, are going to be like, what are we spending on? What have we done that we have spent this much money and our coach hasn't gotten us where we're supposed to be as UNC? Donald, I think this is such a huge season for Carolina. And I just look at their roster and I'm sort of like, I don't know that they've got the horses.
I'd be lying to you if I said that I knew top to bottom what their roster looked like. I know that Van Allen Lubin is not on their team anymore because he just transferred to NC State, and I know they're up in arms about that. But I think the idea that they're spending a lot of money on their roster and the pressure is on Hubert Davis, it already has been. Because remember, they brought in a GM, and the GM is the one that has final say over the roster construction.
Yeah.
Not
He's the guy
coach.
who spent this money. He's the guy.
Right.
Yeah. Jim Tanner is his name.
And now it's Hubert's job to coach this team that he may or may not have wanted all these pieces, right? Or he may have wanted to keep pieces that left, things like that, right? Drake Powell, we talked about Drake Powell when he was at the combine. He was basically like, UNC didn't really prepare me for this in no uncertain terms. And was kind of talking loud on his way out the door, right? But I think when it comes to UNC, this goes back to a conversation we had, about a year ago when, I guess it feels like a year ago, when Bill Belichick was hired, and there were some of those rumors that the boosters would say, hey, let's discard basketball to boost up our football profile because that'll get us into the SEC. Guess what happened in the 6-7 months since that happened, Jason? The SEC became a basketball conference. So the SEC is not going to accept a team that is floundering like the way that UNC is, despite the fact that they have a good name. And so I think, again, I never bought into that rumor because I said in the back of my mind, Hubert Davis is not going to have that kind of time. If Hubert Davis does not get this done this year, and I'm not saying get to the Final Four or anything like that, but as you said, be high in the ACC, be a high seed in the NCAA tournament, there will be no Hubert Davis at UNC next year. There won't be one. This is something where they might, consider firing him in the middle of the season if it gets to a point like it did last year, right? Last year, there was a point where people were like, UNC is done. And it took their athletic director being the head person of the NCAA selection committee being in the room, and all of a sudden, magically, they enter the play-in game, right? So you don't want that to be the case this year. And I think that's what they're focused on. But I don't really, for lack of a better, I don't really care about the roster until it's time to beat them, because that's how I am.
I like it. That works. All right, look, folks, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we want to hear from you. We got a very, very interesting survey we want you to participate in. This is a fun summer activity, people. We'll tell you all about it in just a moment.
All right, summer is here. More sun, more light, more time to do all the things that make summer so special. And the number one thing that you don't want to be doing all summer, spending hours cooking inside. That is where Factor comes in.
That's right, Jason. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals are ready in just 2 minutes, taking the hassle out of eating well. With 45 weekly menu options, you could pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. It's easy to savor more this summer. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. You can get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors.
Man, that sounds really good. Get started, folks, at factormeals.com/DukeBB50 off. Use the code DukeBB50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That code again, DukeBB50 off at factormeals.com/DukeBB50 off for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, factormeals.com/DukeBB50 off.
Is anyone out there? another salesperson enduring the endless search. Exhausting. If you want to get right to the right conversations, you need LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Whether you're looking for new leads or strengthening existing relationships at your top accounts, get right to the right conversations with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Try LinkedIn Sales Navigator now with a free 60-day trial at linkedin.com/trial. That's linkedin.com/trial.
Terms and conditions apply!
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino. A meal isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what you bring to the table. San Pellegrino believes the table is where the best of life happens. That's what makes gathering around it so rich and rewarding. And with their unique sparkling natural mineral water, San Pellegrino brings its best so you can bring yours.
All right, back from the break. Jason and Donald here with you. Get out a pen and paper. I need you to write something down. I got a link for you to click on or to type in, whatever it may be. tinyurl.com/Duke Roundup. I want all of you to do that, because when you hit that link, you will go to the Duke Basketball Roundup fan survey. Folks, here's what we've done. We've put together a bunch of questions. We want to hear from you guys about your Duke fandom, about your favorite teams, your favorite players, what you think of the portal, what you think of NIL, what you think of one and done, all that kind of stuff. We'll get your survey answers over the next week or two. And then, I don't know, maybe, we're going to get heavy into draft coverage here soon, Donald, but at some point very soon, we'll find a time to report on these results. I think, I spent some time working on these questions, and Donald, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the Duke fandom has to say about some really interesting issues.
First off, I'm going to make an executive decision, because right after the draft, we have the 4th of July. We're going to say after the 4th of July, we're going to release the results, which gives you about a month to get these results in. But of course, don't wait to the last minute. Vote early, vote often, as they say in Chicago. But I think, Jason, these the questions that we have kind of bring us some clarity about who our listeners are, right? Who they like, who they, not necessarily dislike, but who do they like? What era kind of do they come from, or what do they like? I think there's always this debate, right? From barbershops to bars to libraries, like who's the best Duke player, right? For Jason, it could be one player. For me, it could be another. And it could be because Jason saw that player play in college. It could be because I saw this player on TV, or I saw him at a basketball game and I was like, that's the greatest basketball player I've ever seen live. Whatever that may be, we have these debates about who the best players are, who the best teams are in Duke history, what we think of NIL, what we think of the portal, and all of these, and what we think Duke's vision should be for the future, whether it be within the ACC, whether it be how we construct, or how Jon Scheyer constructs these rosters. That's what we want to hear about. And sometimes we want to hear the why. And so there's some of these questions we'll ask you to explain yourself in a few words of why you picked what you did, because we want to understand what that is. And I think also it's a fun activity to kind of go through and see what some of those answers are.
Yeah, to me, I mean, obviously it's going to be fun for everybody to fill it out. But to me, the fun thing is going to be seeing what people answer. What do they say when we ask them, who's your all-time favorite Duke team? What do they say about their, what team they would want to see Duke play a home and home against? What are people's answers about the best NBA Dukie, their favorite Tar Heel team that they want to beat, so to speak? Do you want the Tar Heels to be good or bad? We got a bunch of really cool questions in here. Who else other than UNC do you want to beat? Your second favorite team to beat? And then some real questions about the shifting landscape of college basketball, whether, Duke stays in the ACC or goes elsewhere, what you think about NIL and how you would change it, the transfer portal. And then at the very, very end, Donald, we got a place where it's just an open-ended question. Give us any comment you want. And I'm interested in seeing everyone's answers and then being able to come back to all of you and say, hey, this is what the Duke fandom thinks, the future of Duke, the future of college basketball, the past of Duke. This is what you all think about all that stuff.
I'm not going to lie. I anticipate reading some of these answers as a way to kind of guide, Jason, what you and I do on this show as we move forward. Because if the 1978 team is the favorite team amongst the fan base, then I'm calling every episode a blank 100 episode, and we're getting Kenny Denard on here every single time because we will do that for you, the listener. Or if we get Gene Banks and we just call those 50s and we just alternate them back and forth, and all of a sudden you magically have the entire class of 1978.
Well, if that happens, we'll have to get Jim Spanarkel.
Exactly, Jimmy. We get Jaminski. We'll get them all. I think that'd be fun. But in essence, I think the learning how, and again, our listener fan base is not all encompassing, right? We recognize that, but we also don't know everything that you guys want to know about Duke men's basketball. So I think that's going to help us learn more about what we do, what we talk about, and even who we compare to, right? If you guys tell us that, the class of 99 just doesn't cut it compared to class 2001, tell us, because we want to know that stuff. And I think that'll be fun when we go back and forth and we go, dang, I thought this year was going to be the year that won it, or this player was going to be far and away the most popular. And I also I asked, Jason and I were going back and forth, and I said, we want to know the why as well, because learning why Shane Batty is your favorite player, learning why, again, a Jim Spanarkel might be your favorite player could tell you about the era that they're from, but also, again, it could be a personal connection that we would like to hear. So we don't know how many responses we're going to get. It's going to be kind of like headlines, Jason, where we get a ton. We'll read it. We'll read them, and then we'll kind of narrow them down to the select few who we think are the best ones to read on the show.
Yeah, exactly. Again, tinyurl.com/Duke Roundup. That is where you go to fill out this survey. This is going to be fun, folks. I promise you. And like Donald said, we're going to have a ton of draft content coming up. But once we get through all of that, we'll be back to this. We'll be reminding you to fill out this survey. But once we get through all of that, we'll give you the results of this. And we're really excited for this. It's just a good way, as Donald said, for us to connect with you, for you to connect with us, and for the entire Duke community to share our views.
We'll be reminding you on this show, obviously. We'll have them in the show notes for those of you who are able to click through there, but also on our social media channels, Twitter, Blue Sky, at Duke Roundup. We will be posting the links there. And as the keeper of those accounts, I'll make sure that we blast those periodically so that people can do that. And also tell your friends who may watch the show or listen to the show about it, because I think that, again, we want to hear from as many people as we possibly can. Our fan base is incredible. And so this is the time where you get to tell us what you think of some of these teams that we love so much.
Exactly. All right. That's going to do it here for the latest edition of the DBR podcast, latest edition of DBR Bites, I should say. He's Donald. I'm Jason. We'll be back at you very, very soon. Until then, here's the Duke band playing us out and taking us home.